Caddy K, President Obama said, as Richard pointed out, sort of UN speak, Assad must go. He said it again. The question now is, what's the plan to get Assad to go?
Well, the truth is the Americans don't really have a plan, and what I think the Russian moves over the last couple of weeks have shown is the extent to which the U.S. policy in Syria is in tatters and has been so for several years now. There have been moments in the course of the last 4 years where the U.S. could have effectively intervened, where it could have imposed no-fly zones, where it could have imposed buffer zones, where it could have used coercion and force to stop President Assad barrel bombing his own people, which has been a major recruiting tool for ISIS. It didn't do any of those things, and now the Russians are taking that vacuum. I mean, I kind of agree with Mark at the moment. Look, maybe the fact that the Russians have a plan here is better than the no plan that the Americans have. And if it brings some amount of stability, I mean, there are flaws in it because actually Assad is not really fighting ISIS. He's fighting the opponents to his regime. That's his priority. But I think some amount of stability in the region is probably better, and maybe the U.S. can use some influence or negotiating power with Putin to say, listen, can you do something to stop the barrel bombing of civilians? I mean, that might be the only quid pro quo that we get out of this.
Jean, in Washington, John McCain and David Petraeus and the usual voices that have a lot of credibility on these issues are talking about what Caddy just described. I mean, there are folks that don't think it's too late, but some of that is being drowned out by primary politics. Those are voices, Petraeus and McCain, who used to be able to garner some bipartisan support for a more robust foreign policy. Are they breaking through at all anymore?
Well, not really, because what is the bipartisan policy for Syria? I mean, you know, there is still no appetite for the kind of robust U.S. military, not just involvement, but intervention that you would need to really affect events on the ground in Syria. And there just isn't that willingness to do it. So Putin does have a plan. He's going to go ahead and do what he wants to accomplish. To me, it looks like a fairly short-term plan, to tell you the truth, because, you know, I wonder what it's going to look like 6 months from now or a year from now when Russia is starting to get bogged down in a situation that, you know, people are going to start likening, I think, to Vietnam or Afghanistan or other sort of misadventures. Syria is a mess. It's not going to be solved easily, even by Putin.
Beneath the frostiness between the two leaders, I think there's no doubt that coming out of that meeting, there's going to be increased intelligence and military cooperation between the United States and Syria, the United States and Russia on the ground in Syria. And that, again, better for the United States because we'll provide some assistance, but we're not having young American men and women on the ground there.
Well, there will be cooperation in one area. We're going to basically start a conversation with the Russians about the political future of Syria. And the Russians are going to say, we're going to work with this government for now, but if this doesn't work, you conceivably could have a U.S., Russian, Iranian, and I expect Secretary Kerry will talk about this down the road, to come up with a post-Assad. I think it's sequential. First, they're going to try backing Assad. If and when I would predict that doesn't work, then I can imagine a pivot where the United States and Russia talk about the next phase.
Do we have baggage going into that kind of alliance because of the line that we drew and did not enforce?
100%. The United States credibility is taking a major hit. Probably the most consequential thing the president didn't do in his presidency was follow up on his pledges in Syria to attack the regime after they used chemicals. And that had consequences not just in Syria, not just in the Middle East, but throughout the world. And this is, in a sense, the biggest problem, arguably, with his foreign policy legacy, what he hasn't done in this part of the world.
And as they try to